Hello guys, today I would be telling a story on what if Izuku Midoriya was born with a quirk of his own and how would this affect him in his journey on becoming a hero. Stick around and find out. Fire. Fire is the only thing he sees when he opened his eyes. He scans the blazing inferno that is his room. Every furniture burned in emerald fire, yet he doesn't feel any heat from the blaze but some sort of comfort from it. After looking around his room, he noticed something from the corner of his eyes and that he was cloaked in the same flame that burning his room. Panic rose from his core and yell of fear erupts from his mouth but was drowned out by an even louder scream. He turned his direction towards the door when he realized it was his mother who screamed and was desperately calling his name. Izuku. Izuku, please tell me you're alright. He heard his mother from the other side of the door. Mom, please help me. Izuku screamed out in fear. His fear elevates as he noticed the flames in his body rose higher. Inko Midoriya stood in front of her son's room, mind racing to find a way to get to her son without feeding a new batch of oxygen to her son's room. On the other side of the door, little Izuku continued to cry for his mother's help as the fire around continued to grow stronger as he feel his energy slowly ebbing away. And soon enough, Izuku finds himself losing consciousness and the last thing he sees are the fire dissipating, leaving scorch marks around his room before darkness finally took over. After noticing the lack of smoke seeping from the crack of his door, Inko burst through her son's room, ignoring the searing burn from her hand after touching the door knob. Instead of seeing the burnt body of her son, she was fortunately greeted by the sight of her son's unconscious form lying on his bed. She rushed to her son's side, mentally thanking whatever deity heard her prayer for her son's safety when she felt a pulse. She then checked for any signs of injuries but found none on her son's body, as the only damages she found are the two large holes on the back of her son's favorite All Might shirt. She peered over the holes on her son's shirt but didn't find any burn or injuries whatsoever. She shook her head, dismissing the many questions that runs through her mind as she told herself that she have a most important objective to do, and that is her son's well-being. 2 days have passed after the incident. The mother and son duo find themselves at a quirk testing facility with the quirk doctor kindly urging little Izuku to try and consciously activate his quirk. A bead of sweat runs down his forehead as Izuku concentrated for half an hour to call on his quirk but to no avail as it continued to elude him. With a frustrated and tired sigh, Izuku slumps in defeat, wondering on why his quirk won't activate. He tried everything from imagining a warm place to outright shouting, "Quirk activate!" But to no avail as not even a tiny fume of smoke appears. It still won't work. I did everything you told me to, Izuku said to the quirk doctor dejectedly before turning towards his mother. Is there something wrong with me, Mom? Inko's heart broke seeing the look of sadness in her child's face. Oh, Izuku sweetie, there's nothing wrong with you, just haven't find the right way to activate your quirk, Inko said, trying to console her son. Your mother is correct, young man. Everyone has a different method to activate their quirk and yours is no different, we just need to find the right one, the doctor said, trying to cheer up Izuku. But I've already tried everything you told me to, Izuku countered dejectedly. That is true, young man, you did try everything I asked you, the doctor said, even lowering little Izuku's will to continue with the activation. But those are other fire users' activation method. And those methods doesn't work for every user, because if it did we would only have one method for flame quirk activation. The doctor continued, making Izuku look up to him, hope on activating his quirk appearing on his feature. His mind then wanders to all the videos of All Might facing what seems to be an impossible situation but still find a way to save the day. Determination fill his being as he concentrate on calling his quirk. I can be a hero with my quirk. No. I will be a hero like All Might with my quirk, Izuku repeatedly told himself. Deep in thought, Izuku failed to notice the startled yelp of his mother and the astonished gasp of the quirk doctor. He was broken out of his thought when he heard his mother called his name. Opening his eyes, he was greeted by the sight of his mother and the quirk doctor stepping away from him, his mother looking at him with pride in her eyes. He wonders on why his mother was looking at him like that, but then his eyes widen in realization. He turned his gaze towards the doctor, who nods at him, confirming him on what he was thinking. He scans himself trying to see his quirk for his own eyes. He yelps in surprise as he see a large emerald bonfire behind him, but immediately calmed down after seeing the fire was attached on his back and wasn't harming him. Izuku wonders on why his quirk was on his back. He tried to move it and look at in awe as it moved like another set of limb. It was then he realized that the emerald bonfire was a set of wings that is made in fire. Mom, look, I activate my quirk. It's so cool, Izuku said excitedly, pointing at his wings. The doctor smiles at the small child's excitement before going over a nearby desk to rummage inside its content. After a few seconds he find what he was looking for. Clearing his throat, he gathered the attention of the two Midoriyas, who looks at him questioningly. He held up a handheld mirror, allowing little Izuku to see his face. Izuku stare in awe as he see that wing on his back wasn't the only thing that appears when he activates his quirks. Looking onto the mirror, he see his eyes burning, emitting an emerald ethereal glow to them. He turn his head side to side and notice that fire in his eyes moves like a burning torch in the dark. Whoa, that's so cool, Izuku exclaimed as he excitedly turned his head from side to side, watching a trail of fire follows his eyes. Whoa, indeed, young man. From what I am seeing, you have the potential to become one of Japan's most powerful hero. Really? Mom, did you hear that? Mr. Doctor said I could become powerful hero. Izuku said to his mother. Inko smiles hearing that her son has a powerful quirk, meaning he would be able to achieve his dream of becoming a hero like All Might. Yes, dear, I heard what the doctor said, but please calm down, we don't want to burn anything down. Inko said to, trying to calm down her excited son, who was to went back on admiring and testing his quirk. Turning towards the doctor, Inko asks the doctor on whether or not her son could really become one of Japan's top hero. The doctor nodded his head in confirmation as he watched Izuku jumping up and down trying to fly but failed to properly flap his wings for flight. He has the potential to be one, ma'am. The size of his flame is abnormally large for his age, and to add to the fact that it is a newly awakened one at that. The doctor stated as he analyzed Izuku. Inko looks at her child in worry after hearing the word, abnormal, from the quirk doctor. Is that a bad thing? Can we do anything about it? Inko asked, making the doctor look at her with a raised brow, confused on what she meant with her question. The doctor chuckled, realizing her question. I think you misunderstand me, ma'am. There is nothing wrong with your son. When I said abnormal, I didn't mean it in a bad way. I am just saying that your son's quirk is unusual. Like I said earlier, newly awakened quirk starts of small and weak. As we all know, quirks are like muscles. The muscle starts of weak, but when you train them, over time they become much stronger than they were before. But your son's quirk, on the other hand, is different. It's already showing to be a strong one, like he was already using it for years now. And what's even stranger, young Izuku's quirk is still activated and it doesn't seem to be growing any weaker. The doctor stated. Wouldn't that be dangerous? His quirk not deactivating, I mean? Inko asks. The doctor remained silent for a moment as he continued to observe his patient. Normally yes, but from what we are seeing his quirk seems to be. The doctor replied but stopped mid-sentence when he noticed that Izuku's movement is getting sluggish by the seconds before he finally collapsed in exhaustion. The two adults immediately rushed towards the unconscious boy's side, with the Midoriya matriarch cradling her son's limp form. Inko turns towards the doctor frantically asking him if her son is going to be alright. The doctor was about to reply but was stopped when a fountain of tears erupts from the woman's eyes. The man watched perplexed, wondering on how the woman suddenly gained a secondary quirk, as he was sure that her quirk was telekinesis. Shaking himself from his stupor, the doctor calms her down, saying that her son was going to be alright and was just exhausted from using his quirk for a long period of time. After an hour of consultation and double checking on Izuku's condition, the quirk doctor advised Inko that if Izuku wishes to train with his quirk, he must train on an open area with fewer people and flammable objects for safety, and preferably with a large supply of water to douse his quirk if ever he lose control with his quirk. With the last piece of advice from the professional, Inko paid and thanked the doctor before leaving for her home with her sleeping son on her arm. As she drove through the streets of the city, she glanced through the back mirror of her car to see her son sleeping soundly. A small yet content smile appears on her face, as her prayers had been answered. Her son was given a quirk. A very powerful quirk at that. 3 months have passed since he first consciously activated his quirk, and within those months, Izuku find himself the center of attention from his peers after showing them his quirk. At that time he thought that his best friend, Katsuki Bakugo, would react like his classmates did, but he was proven wrong when instead of getting a compliment or at least an acknowledgement from his friend, he instead received a scowl and an insult. To this day Izuku couldn't find out the reason why his childhood friend was acting the way he did. He asks his mother on why he was being cold to him, and the answer he would always get was that she doesn't know either. But instead of moping about it, his mother told him that instead of dwelling with something he has no control over, he should just continue to study and improve himself to achieve his dream of becoming a hero. Obliging to his mother's words, he went to a secluded beach near their apartment. Said beach was littered with mountains of junks, thrown over the year by careless people and government officials who could have cared less to clean up the piling mess. Although both him and his mother were saddened at state of the beach, they are at least a bit happy that they have a place where he can train his quirk without looking out for other people that could get hurt while he trains. Although this Sunday started the same as any other day, just him and his mother. After eating his lunch, Izuku quickly made his way to the beach to get back on training as soon as possible. Expecting to be greeted only by the sound of crashing waves and the occasional cause of seabirds flying overhead, he was greeted with another sound he is familiar with, the sound of crying, the sound of a little girl crying to be exact. He looked over his shoulder after hearing his mother call for his name, but decided to ignore her calls as he has something much he thinks much important to get to, and that is to find the crying girl. Going around and climbing piles of junk, Izuku finally found the source of what he was looking for. At the foot of a mountain of junk was a girl hugging her knees. As he made her way towards the girl, he noticed that she was wearing a plain white sundress dirtied by what looked like to be from dirt, brown sandals and a badly damaged sun hat. As he got closer to her, he noticed that her cries quieted a bit before she looks up, scanning her surroundings. It didn't take long for two pairs of green eyes clash with one another, one widening in shock and fear, while the other one stares in curiosity. He paused in his step when he noticed her stare turn into a glare when she realized he was making his way towards her. He took a step back when she suddenly stood up, allowing her damaged hat to fall to the sandy ground, revealing a hair made of what looks like to be vines. He stares in fascination at the moving green mass on top of her head. Scenarios of ways how she could utilize her quirk ran rampant in his head, leading him barely hearing the question that escaped from the green-haired girl. It's not until her shout of frustration broke him out from his train of thought. He gulped in nervousness when he noticed the vines on her head starts extending until it reached the middle of her back. I told you to leave me alone. I haven't done anything to you. The girl shouted at him as she hesitantly dropped into a sloppy fighting stance. Seeing that she was preparing to fight him, Izuku immediately raised his hands, showing her he means no harm. I am sorry, but I don't know what you're talking about. Izuku nervously replied, hoping that his answer would be enough to pacify the angry girl in front of him. But unfortunately for him, instead of calming her down, it instead pissed her off even more. Liar. I know that blonde jerk sent you here to bully me again. The girl angrily shouted, confusing Izuku even more. I don't know who this blonde jerk you're talking about, but I am only here with my mom to train my quirk. Izuku replied, making the girl stare at him for a moment, mentally debating to whether or not she could trust his word. Izuku could see her mentally debating with herself to trust his words. He didn't have to wait to hear her reply to know that she didn't trust his words, as the frown on her face deepened, signifying that she didn't believe his answer. She was about to open her mouth to warn him off again, but stopped when the voice of an older woman reaches her ears. She looked over Izuku's shoulder and see Inko Midoriya running towards their location. Her shoulder sags in relief when she realized the boy in front of her was telling the truth and that he was not here to torment her like the blonde boy and his posse did for the past few days. She curiously watched the two other green-haired people in front of her, with the older one fussing over the boy who found her earlier. A small chuckle escapes her lips as she watched the boy in front of her flush in embarrassment when he remembered that she was watching from the side. Hearing the chuckle, Inko turned her gaze towards the unknown girl before her eyes widen at the current state that she is in. With a hastened pace, she moved towards the little girl, who immediately stepped back in fright seeing her approach. As she got closer towards the frightened child, she could now clearly see that dirt wasn't the only thing that was layered on her clothes, as she realized that it was ash. Although the child was frightened by her, she appreciated that she didn't run away or at the very least become hostile and attack her and her son in self-defense. Kneeling in front of the scared child, she gently put a hand over shoulder. Worry flared inside her as a simple touch elicited a wince from the child. She wondered what or who could have done something horrible to a child. It's okay, we are not going to hurt you, Inko said, trying to calm the child in front of her. Oh my goodness, what happened to you? Did someone did this to you, if you don't mind me asking? Inko asked in a calm voice, but she couldn't help the worry drip from her words as she noticed the little girl wince with every little movement she make. Opening her bag, Inko rummaged through its content, trying to find the items she would need to help the girl in front of her. She mentally thanked the heavens that she always remembered to bring the emergency kit. She asks the little girl if she could clean and patched her wounds up, even though she would still insist to clean them even if the little girl said no. With a hesitant nod, the little girl allows Inko to clean up her injuries, wincing and hissing in pain as the alcohol touch her injured skin. While patching the girl up, Inko decided to introduce herself and her son to the girl, who looked back between the two Midoriyas before finally introducing herself as Shiozaki Obara. I would say our meeting would have been good if it wasn't for the state you are in right now, Inko said as she did the final touches of cleaning Shiozaki's wounds. But I hope you don't mind me asking again. What happened to you, dear, and where are your parents? Inko asked again, worry grown inside her as the thought of Shiozaki being alone with no adult supervision. Shiozaki looked down on the ground, remaining silent, and with each seconds passed by, Inko feels pity and sadness swell up inside her as she realized the little girl in front of her might be an orphan. But fortunately for her, that wasn't the case when Shiozaki looked back up again but refused to make eye contact, with an embarrassment written all over her blushing face. They are probably be still at the park looking for me, Shiozaki said, eliciting a sigh of relief from the older woman in front of her. Then we better find them and show them that you are alright, Inko suggested as she gently pulled the child to walk with her but stopped in her tracks when she felt Shiozaki resisting from her. She looked over her shoulder and see that the little Shiozaki was desperately resisting to be moved from her spot. No, please. I can't let them see me like this, they are already disappointed in me, Shiozaki exclaimed, startling Izuku, who jumped in shock at the sudden outburst, while Inko looked in curiosity and worry, wondering what type of Shiozaki's parents are to elicit this type of reaction from the child. Inko kneeled in front of the child and gently asked her if her parents are harming her in any way, and for what feels like the 100th times for Inko, she sighs in relief after hearing her answer. Minutes have passed until Inko was finally able to persuade Shiozaki to come with them to look for her parents. While driving their way towards the park, it was there where they found out that Shiozaki was visiting the city for a month with her parents. Izuku stared at the girl in awe as she revealed that a few days after they moved into the city, her parents went to the park to familiar themselves with their new environment. After being allowed to play with the other children in the park, it didn't take long for Shiozaki to be greeted by a sight she would detest. She saw 3 kids bullying another defenseless kid. As Shiozaki continued with her story, disappointment slowly creeps inside Izuku, realized who Shiozaki had a run-in with, resulting at the state she was in. He heard other children talk about Katsuki becoming a bully who picked on his peers for having what he deemed to be a useless quirk. At first he refused to accept the rumors he was hearing, as the two of them dreamed on becoming a hero like All Might, but seeing Shiozaki besides him made him realize that Katsuki has become a different person after getting his quirk. Although he just met her earlier, he couldn't help but like the girl besides him, someone who would try to save someone in need. Arriving at the park where Shiozaki Alamji with the 2 Midoriyas arrived at a scene of her parents frantically looking for their missing daughter. As the 2 Midoriyas got closer towards Shiozaki's parents, they could see and hear them asking for help with 2 policemen and any nearby bystanders for the whereabouts of their daughter. If it wasn't for the twitching and head movement of the man, the Midoriyas would have assumed he was a tree that has suddenly grown legs, as it didn't help that the man they assumed to be Shiozaki's father have tree branches growing on top of his head. It didn't help the fact that the man decided to wear a 2-piece brown suit with brown leather shoes. Shiozaki's mother, on the other hand, looks like Shiozaki, as she had been aged up in her early 30s, down to the way they dress to how they look. It was undeniable that she was her mother's daughter if you ignore the fact that her mother's hair is a normal-looking black hair that reaches the middle of her back, but as they got even closer they could see Shiozaki's mother's quirk was related to their hair, as it move and extend, erratically mirroring the distress the owner is in. Mama. Papa. Shiozaki screamed out quickly, earning the attention of her parents along with the policeman besides them. Seeing their daughter, the Obara couple didn't hesitate for a brief second before bolting towards their daughter, barely avoiding barreling through other people on their path. Shiozaki soon finds herself engulfed in her parents' embrace. After their heartfelt reunion, the 2 Obaras turn their attention towards the Midoriyas, who watch silently from the side, not wanting to ruin their moment with each other. Little Shiozaki tugs her the hems of her mother's dress, earning her attention before she told her that it was the Midoriyas who found her and helped her clean up her wounds. My name is Magdalene Obara and this is my husband Chrysostomo Obara, and we would like to thank you for finding AMD returning our little Shiozaki to us. If there is anything you need, just ask and we would try to repay it, Magdalene says as she and her husband bow in gratitude. There is no need to bow, Mrs. Obara, I only did what is right, Inko replied towards the other woman. But still thank you, Magdalene continued but hesitate as she didn't know the names of the people who found her daughter. Seeing her paused, Inko introduced themselves to the two Ibaras. After introducing themselves to each other, the Ibaras decided to invite the Midoriyas back to the park for some lunch tomorrow as a thanks. Inko at first denied as she doesn't want to burden them but relented nonetheless as the Ibaras insisted on it. For Izuku and Shiozaki on the other hand was glad that Inko agreed to the invitation as they would be able to see each other again. Unbeknownst to the two children, this would be the origin story of two heroes whose quirks couldn't be different from one another yet still form one of Japan's top duo in hero society. This is it for the first episode of Heaven's Fire. What do you guys think? Feel free to drop a comment down below. Like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.